really helping them all be successful. So I also want to give a special thank you to all of our project partners and those that really help make this program happen, particularly the Division of Facilities and Real Estate Services that funds this program and helps make it happen. All of our partners at Bon Appetit, Penn Housekeeping, Penn's Landscape and Architecture Division, CHOP, PSOM, the Environmental Innovations Initiative, and Penn Sustainability. And also the Penn Women's Center always lets us graciously use their space for meetings. So big thank you to them as well. We're so pleased that you all are here to join us today to showcase the work that these student EcoReps have done over the past academic year. As many of you know, Penn's Student EcoReps program is an environmental leadership program that allows students to work on projects on campus to advance sustainability, and really helps our office carry out many of the goals within the Climate and Sustainability Action Plan, which wouldn't be possible without the work of the students and their project partners. And this end of year forum is really the culmination of all of the hard work that the students have done over the past year. I'm really proud of each and every one of you for showing your passion and enthusiasm for sustainability, and helping to find solutions to real world, really novel problems that folks are really at the cutting edge of working on. So it's very impressive to see everything that the students are doing. Today, we'll hear from 5 different teams of student EcoReps as they report on their projects. Topics include sustainability training and dining, waste reduction, bird-friendly measures, green living, and our climate and sustainability action plan. So each group will be introduced by their project partner and have about 15 minutes to present, and we'll take 5 minutes for questions at the end of each presentation. So be thinking about any questions you might have for the students. If you are joining virtually, we just ask that you raise your hand, use the raise hand function under reactions in Zoom, so that we know that you have a question, and then we will be able to unmute you and allow you to speak. You can also type into the chat if you like, so please feel free to do that. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce our first group's project partner. So I'm pleased to introduce Kelly Weiderman, the Associate Director of Outreach for the Environmental Innovations Initiative.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Kelly, and I am with the Environmental Innovations Initiative. We are an office in the Provost office, and we are pretty brand new. So I'm pleased to introduce Price Davies and Bianca Montanez, who's on Zoom with us today. And they were very helpful in a project that we worked on related to the Climate and Sustainability Action Plan and some academic goals for Penn. So I'll introduce Price and Bianca.
Hi, everyone. So the project me and Bianca worked on the past 2 semesters was the Climate and Sustainability Action Plan 4.0. All right, let's see if this works. Okay, so yeah, just a brief overview. So in consultation with the Environmental Innovation Initiative, we developed a series of reports in order to inform the development of the CSAP 4.0's academic goals. So this is our team. It's me, I'm a senior, and Bianca, who's joining us virtually, and she's a freshman. So just to give you some background about the Environmental Innovation Initiative, it's a pretty new initiative within the Office of the Provost that is really working to bring together faculty and leaders across different departments and disciplines and schools, as well as host programming and things like that, to really innovate for sustainability. And we worked with Melissa Goodall, Kelly Weiderman, who just introduced us, and Maria Trujillo, who are all super helpful in guiding us in this process. So just a brief overview of how this presentation is going to look. First, going to talk a little bit more about the project, some of the broader goals. Then I'll go into the course gap analysis report, which was a report I worked on. Bianca will talk about her academic integration report, and then she will close us out with a brief. So yeah, specifically, we worked on 2 separate reports. I really drove what we did this past couple semesters. So we have a course gap analysis report, which basically is looking at data on sustainability courses at Penn, seeing where there's gaps in the courses so that we can recommend new courses, see where there's room for more diversity in courses and things of that nature. And then there's the academic integration report, which is a little more broader level. It's basically looking at how other peer schools have incorporated academics into their sustainability plans, and then using their plans and what they've learned to kind of inform our next CSEP plan. So alongside that, there was kind of 3 general goals that really motivated these reports. So the first one was to set the stage for better integration of academic goals into CSEP 4.0. The second one was to define key elements of a possible experiential learning program at Penn. And unfortunately, the report that coincided with this goal, we couldn't reach it. And then we have our third goal, which is to support student academic journeys. So just to be a little bit more clear about how these goals relate to our reports. So the course gap analysis report is all about really helping students and by developing courses that suit their needs and desires and are accessible. So it's really all about supporting student academic journeys. Then the academic integration report really helps these broader level goals of integrating academics into sustainability by using evidence from other schools, which is really helpful. So now I'll talk a little bit more about my course gap analysis report. So this was a really data-driven report, which was really rewarding and I think very helpful. So I started out with something called a course inventory, which was conducted by Penn Sustainability, that basically identified courses at sustainability in their curriculum. And then they also categorized these courses into a few different topics. I believe there's 6 of them: resilience, nature, climate, equity, health, and urbanization, which generally encapsulates the specific facet of sustainability a course teaches, and a course can be listed under multiple different topics. And then there's also information about the department, who was able to enroll, the prerequisites, and I was able to use that information to get a sense of how advanced the course was, which was useful in my later analysis, as I'll show. So this first visualization is basically plotting the amount of sustainability courses by the topic they fall under, as well as
I'm actually just, hold on.
they fall under as well as the general level of the course. So if you look at the orange bars, if you look at the orange bars, you can see that there are not many introductory courses in urbanization, health, equity, when compared to tracks or topics such as nature and resilience. This is also very pronounced at the grad level. So it's kind of showing that there's definitely disparity in what topics are being focused on. My next, visualization I did was looking at how many sustainability courses are in each department and then categorizing those departments into the schools they're in. And I thought this was really important because, for Penn to really teach sustainability to all students, they should cover all their schools. And if you look at the dark gray and light blue lines, you can see that many of the sustainability courses are in the college or design, whereas, the engineering school, Wharton, the law school, all only have a handful of courses, which was a really, and at least for me, was a pretty surprising finding. And I think it's a finding that's really important. And then lastly, this was kind of the first chart I did, but I focused only on courses that fulfilled a requirement in the college. And this might seem a little odd, but my reasoning for this was that, if we want students who may not take sustainability courses otherwise to take sustainability courses, it would be good if they're tied to a college requirement, because I know, talking to my friends or in personal experience, you're really incentivized when you're taking courses outside of your major. It's a real benefit to to find courses that also fulfill a requirement just because you need them to graduate. And so with these visualizations, as well as some other analysis, I kind of drew 3 main recommendations. So this first point is only 50% of courses fall under the health, equity, and climate topics, while 86% fall under the resilience and nature topics. And that shows that we need to expand our course diversity, and especially focusing on introductory undergraduate courses so that these topics, which are really important parts of sustainability, are accessible to people with little experience. And then 85% of the courses are in the college or Weitzman School of Design. And I think this really shows that we need to make a more focused effort on incorporating sustainability into the engineering school, Wharton, law, et cetera, just because these schools really are, teaching the problem solvers of tomorrow, and we want them to be able to contend with sustainability issues. And lastly, in general, there's not many incentives to take sustainability courses. And one way we could work around this is to introduce a school-wide sustainability requirement. I know this is a really big deal, but given just how important sustainability is, I think it would be an interesting idea to think about. So next, Bianca will talk about.
Good afternoon to all. As Price mentioned, I was tasked with the academic integration report. If you could go to the next slide. So as a quick refresher, my project consisted of the development of a report that researches how other universities have integrated academic goals into their sustainability plans and what the University of Pennsylvania can replicate, adapt, and avoid. Here I have a quick overview of what my presentation will cover, but I will go more into specifics on the following slides. If you could, yeah. Okay, to select a list of best fit institutions in which their sustainability plans can be used as an inspiration for the next iteration of the CSAP, I first collected data from the STARS self-reporting framework, which basically tracks and evaluates over 500 participating universities and their sustainable practices. Currently, the University of Pennsylvania has a gold rating, second highest possible rank. This shows that there is definite room for improvement, but we should also applaud all the work that's gone into reaching this rank. If you could go to the next slide. The STARS program basically scores different sections, including the academic sector, which is where I focus my analysis on. As a focus group, I selected Ivy League schools and Ivy Plus groups institutions due to their similarity to the University of Pennsylvania. This was done to assess how the institutions compared to the University of Pennsylvania scores. As you can see on the table, compared to the average scores of other institutions, UPenn individual scores fall well below average. And this was something of concern. So therefore, to assure that the future recommendations would improve Penn's incorporation of sustainable practices in the academic sector, I looked into universities that exceeded above 35% more in the curriculum and learning outcome sections, compared to the University of Pennsylvania score, which was about 50%. These two sections were of most focus because they were in need of most improvement. After doing all the math, the universities that fit the following criteria were Stanford, Cornell, Northwestern University, Berkeley, and Emory University. If you could go to the next slide. So after looking into each of their sustainability plans, I found 3 recommendations that the University of Pennsylvania could replicate and would be very beneficial. It's important to keep in mind that some changes are recommended and maybe suggestions will be better outlined on the report. But for the simplicity of this presentation, I wanted to talk about the 3 main things the University of Pennsylvania could replicate. The first one would be a university-wide requirement to graduate with a sustainable learning outcome as part of the core curriculum. I know Price talked a little bit about it. His data also supports this notion. This was brought by Cornell. The second idea would be to conduct a pre-registration survey of sustainability-related course offerings. This would allow the university to have very well concentrated data that they could then import into the AESHE STARS program. And then last, it would be also to increase transparency of sustainable course offerings through improved advertising and technology. Some suggestions are course catalogs, course flagging, and etc. This would also facilitate students' ability to take sustainable learning outcomes. So if you could go, so that was basically the whole idea of my project. And to conclude, through these reports, we were able to generate like evidence-based recommendations in line with the goal the Environmental Innovations Initiative set for us. I would like to thank the support of our project partners and the EcoRep program, including our coordinators, Skylar and Ryan. Thank you so much for everything. And yeah, if there's any questions, we feel very free to answer them. Thank you.
Yeah, so the question was, what is the easiest recommendation that can potentially be implemented next year? So, a lot of these recommendations are pretty big and would require a fairly big overhaul, but I think, for my report, one of them would just to have, like the law school or Wharton or engineering or any of the schools with pretty low sustainability course offerings to really see why that's the case, see if there's like courses that have sustainability in them, but, aren't really on the catalog, and to try to see, where, they're falling short potentially. Bianca, do you have any response for your report or?
Yeah, I would agree with what you're saying. This is more of laying the groundwork of what the next iteration of the CSAP would be. And I think it was very important for us as students to compile all this data and just bring into light things that the University of Pennsylvania could improve on in their sustainability academic sector. So it would be very interesting to see these conclusions or recommendations be carried out on following projects.
Okay, any more questions or?
How likely do you think that Penn will have a sustainability report?
I'm not really sure, but I think like the trends are looking good. I feel like there's definitely been more of an effort over time to incorporate sustainability, and I think maybe if maybe hopefully our reports changes some opinions, but yeah, I'm optimistic.
One more question.
Yeah, that's a good question, and definitely something to think about, since we wanted to, this requirement to make it more burdensome. I mean, I think one potential thing is, we have a fair amount of requirements. Maybe if one of those courses you took in a requirement was also sustainable, that could fulfill it, and that wouldn't necessarily add on another course you had to take. If that makes sense. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, and thank you for watching my presentation.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you so much, Bianca and Price. As an academic institution, thinking about how sustainability is integrated into academics on campus is critically important. So really appreciate your work and efforts there. So now I am so pleased to introduce Wendy Sparks, the Director of Housekeeping, to introduce her group.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. First of all, I'd like to thank James and Zaid for a great job. I mean, honestly, you guys really exceeded our expectations and were engaged along the way. So it's my pleasure to introduce James Torney, whose major is in earth science, and he's a junior, and also Zaid Doman, who majors in linguistics, and he is a freshman. So thank you both for all of your work. We look forward to hearing all about it. And I know you got out and about on our campus and went to many other campuses, and I hope you enjoyed the experience as much as we did. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that illustrious introduction. This is James and I. We were part of the housekeeping team, but our project could more accurately be described as the waste project.
All right. Wendy did a great job introducing us. This is just our team. I guess the only other thing is I'm from Staten Island, New York, and Nate is from Spearfish, South Dakota.
So we'll begin by just giving you guys a brief overview of the project that we'll be presenting today. We'll start off with a rundown of the project as a whole, then we'll move on to the current waste systems that are being used on Penn's campus. Then we're going to compare them to waste practices and procedures used by other institutions in the Philly area. And then we'll end by giving some recommendations based off of the results we found.
All right, so I'm going to start out by just delineating the objectives that we set at the beginning of this project. So first, we wanted to gather and assess the current strategic waste systems that we have in place on campus, identify where we have strong points, identify pitfalls, areas where we might look for improvement in the future. After putting that together, we wanted to collaborate with peer institutions in the Philadelphia area to share information with them about waste management and learn about what they're doing in order to manage their waste. And then finally, after doing all of that, we wanted to identify solutions to the challenges that we had identified to Penn's waste management strategy.
So as promised, we'll start off with looking at what Penn's infrastructure for waste looks like. During our tour of the Penn campus, we realized that there are a lot of great successes that we use here when it comes to waste and managing it. So for example, Penn uses pressure gauged compactors. This means that on compactors like the ones pictured up here, there's a pressure gauge that tells you when an optimal time would be to empty the compactor. That's really good for efficiency's sake. So you know how to use it, when to empty it as soon as you need to. We also use a single stream recycling process thanks to our partnership with JP Mascaro, which is able to recycle anything under the sun, whether it be paper or cardboard or flexible plastics. Because of our partnership with them, we don't need to spend the time separating all of those recyclables, and they can take them all as one group. And just, a diverse array of other options that we see all across the campus. There are some challenges, however. Due to the urban environment of Penn's campus, there are some space restrictions when it comes to dealing with waste, and receptacle design is a big issue where you need specific receptacles for specific sectors of the college and campus, and that can be a hassle sometimes.
Another area that we had a lot of focus on was the way that the university communicates around waste. We identified a few challenges with that, especially assessing the efficacy of the signage that we use to guide sorting decisions. Signage is very important in influencing the user behavior with determining what goes into recycling versus just trash. Additionally, we wanted to make more efficient use of the waste audit data we've collected over the years. We have a lot of data that we haven't really made great use of yet, but we want to use that to guide decisions about what we're doing to communicate around the community. And finally, just increasing awareness in general about waste management and what the university is doing to make it more sustainable.
Then next, we're going to talk about some of the institutions we were lucky to visit. We talk about peer institutions, and by that, we have two groups that we worked with. We looked at other universities in Philadelphia we wanted to look at ones that had urban campuses and student populations roughly equivalent to what Penn has. And the two we looked at in specific were Drexel and Temple universities. Then along with that, we were able to go to some large event venues. These were sports stadiums in Philadelphia. And they were interesting to see because they deal with a large amount of traffic in a small amount of time. So seeing how they are able to communicate about waste and recycling to a large group of people with only a limited amount of time would be really interesting for us, because it is also comparable to some of the larger sports events that we have here on Penn's campus. And the two that we were able to go to were Lincoln Financial Field and Citizens Bank Park.
So I'm going to start out by talking about what we saw at Drexel University. Drexel is our peer in every sense of the word. It's right down the block. They're also in a very urban environment and deal with a lot of the same challenges that we do here on Penn's campus. So in order to address some of their challenges, they have a really large focus on signage there. They constantly are evaluating what they're doing in terms of signage. They've made their signage artistic, student-friendly, simple, and they also have included signage that describes the actual recycling process and the end consequences of the process, especially to target the social consciousness of the community. In addition, they have done waste-centered events in order to drive community engagement with sustainability and especially in terms of waste management. Every year they do something called the Campus Race to Zero Waste, which is an 8-week long event where the different schools and centers at Drexel compete to see who can get the lowest diversion rate. And they also hold mini pop-up events during that campaign, and they do things like e-waste disposal, just bringing attention to different facets of waste management on their campus. And finally, they do have unique strategies for addressing that data that they've collected through waste audits. Particularly, they have a dedicated communication channel on their campus in the form of a listserv, where they are able to look where they have high rates of contamination, send an email to all the people that engage with that building or center and say, hey, we have a problem here. This is what we need to do to fix it. And they've found that that has helped to remediate some of the issues they've had with contamination over the years. And this is just examples of some of that signage we were talking about. As you can see, the sorting signage is very simple, no words at all except yes or no. People could just look at it and make an instantaneous decision about what needs to be done with their waste. And on the left, we have that signage that we were talking about that shows the recycling process in general in order to target the social consciousness of the students and staff there. Because people, if they see what's happening in the end with their recycled goods, they're going to be more likely to actually do the work of doing accurate sorting and recycling the right way.
And then when it came to Temple, they had a lot of similar successes to Drexel, especially when it came to signage. So like Drexel, Temple's recycling signage is very simple and easy to use. It tells you exactly what you need to know and nothing more. It doesn't have huge text bubbles because when you're making a decision, walking to the trash can, you don't have a lot of time to just sit there and read like which receptacle you're meant to use. Temple also utilizes location-specific receptacles. So this is something like different trash can lids that accommodate different areas, such as different lids in dining halls that only accommodate bottles and cans so that there's less contamination in the recycling. And here on the far left, you can see an example of those types of receptacles where the landfill one is a square box, which is good for plates and food scraps, whereas on the right, you have a circular container which only accepts bottles and cans. And again, some of the other signage that just has very clear illustrations of what is recyclable and no big text or anything to read.
Next, I'm going to talk about our tours at large event venues, specifically Citizens Bank Park and Lincoln Financial Field. In these tours, we wanted to identify some of the solutions that they've had to the fast traffic of waste disposal that they engage with there, especially to guide our decisions about what we're doing at large events on campus, including athletics events and more campus-wide events like commencement, for example. So what we found there was that they have distinguished teams for trash pickup, in which the sorters do distinguish trash from recyclables after the event has happened. This is something that we don't necessarily do on Penn's campus following large events. The teams that we have cleaning up after large events tend to just put everything in the same stream, and it's a problem for our diversion rate after those large events. So we believe that by doing what Aramark, who services these venues, does after large events, we believe we could increase the diversion rate following these events drastically. And we've just included some pictures of our tours to these venues, which were really interesting and exciting.
Now our last section will be talking about some of the recommendations that we were able to gather. So a lot of the recommendations had to pertain to signage. That was a big theme for our project. Some of the things we recommend were new designs for signs around Penn's campus that, like Drexel and Temple, are very user-friendly, very easy to use, very easy to understand. Another recommendation would be regular audits of the signage and bin pairings around Penn. These could be done during periods of student absence, whether it be winter break, spring break, or both, where you can just throughout the year see how well and effective signage is, especially if it's new signage that we implement, see if it's actually working. And then just incorporating more information about the actual recycling process can raise awareness. I think when a lot of students and staff think about recycling or waste management, it's very nebulous to them. So actually inviting them into understanding the process, we think would be very beneficial.
The next set of recommendations that we generated pertains to the infrastructure that we have here on campus for waste management. So one key recommendation that we have is to better use the waste data that we have collected through audits in order to drive decisions about receptacle design. If we've learned one thing during this whole process, it's that the design of the can or receptacle that people are putting things into, it's one of the key factors influencing whether someone's actually going to take the work and actually sort their trash. So we think that if we identify a large contamination rate in a certain area, that reevaluating the type of receptacle that we're using there could greatly improve what's happening at that location. Additionally, we want to create a waste dashboard online in order to increase transparency about that waste data. We think that a lot of the data that we have now is kind of closed off, inaccessible to the general community. And we think that by increasing access to that data, that people take a greater role in trying to improve the sustainability of the campus's practices. Additionally, creating a network among our peer institutions, including the ones that we visited as part of this project, we think that that would greatly improve the waste management strategies, not only the ones that we have here at Penn, but also the strategies that are being used by other campuses. I think that by creating some sort of consortium or group that meets regularly to discuss these issues, that we can drive greater diversion rates across all of our peer institutions. And finally, creating a dedicated waste management channel here on campus, sort of like what we discussed at Drexel, where they have that email listserv. We think that having a more dedicated channel to stuff like that could help us to more quickly target areas where we're having large contamination rates.
And then we'll end with just some other miscellaneous recommendations. We think that such events like campus-wide events that would be able to drive awareness and enthusiasm about sustainable practices when it comes to waste management would be really helpful. This could be something undertaken by the Penn EcoReps or any other organization that is happy to deal in sustainability. And also just like we saw with the large sports venues, implementing the sorting after large events would be really handy, just because it gets things done in an orderly time and there's less waste when it comes to waste management. And that was our presentation. We'd be happy to take any questions you would like to pose to us.
Yeah, basically every institution that we've dealt with does contract their waste management out. I mean, everyone takes care of like their own like back of house kind of work. We all have our different infrastructure systems in order to better manage the waste, but in the end, everyone is calling someone at the end of the day to come pick it up. Which is something that a challenge that we actually talked about. The different contractors have different processes and ways that they deal with waste. So in the end, we also have to choose a sustainable contractor in order to make sure that we're making the maximum impact.
And to go off of that, with all these different companies that universities are working with and all these different processes, there were concerns when we would visit some other institutions of privacy. And so we weren't really able to disclose or get a lot of the information that we wanted, not because these processes are necessarily like trade secrets, but it is understandable that some of these institutions wouldn't want to share every bit of detail with us.
Hi. So that was a great presentation, and I love the way that you sort of framed it and did the research. I'm curious as to whether you all had the opportunity to talk to any students at the other institutions, because I actually have a kid at Drexel right now, and she tells me that the signage is great, but the follow through isn't. And I'm curious as to whether, and she didn't know about the I forget what it's called, the zero waste campaign, until I sent her the link to the facility site. So I'm curious as to whether you had student impressions and whether that might be another sort of EcoRep project for future years.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Melissa. One thing that we did not directly formally engage with students as part of this project, but we did have informal discussions just because of the nature of Philadelphia. I mean, we have friends at Temple and Drexel, so we kind of have an idea of what's going on aside from what the staff is talking about there. There are some issues that were identified with that, especially this relates to the way that these institutions are communicating around waste, which is why this is something that we targeted a lot in our projects to better look at how Penn can do this, even if these other institutions aren't necessarily following up on what they say that they're doing. We want to be the ones that lead in that regard.
I was just curious, kind of like off someone else's question, like if you could pick one of these recommendations, what one of those you could put into action, like wave a wand to make it happen?
I mean, I believe that the most significant thing that we identified was signage, just reevaluating what the university is doing in terms of signage. I mean, just through informal conversations on campus, a lot of people have said that our signage is very complicated, and it takes too long in some instances to really look at what you want to do with a particular waste item. I know, like for flexible plastics, for example, like you have to scan a QR code to know what to do exactly with that. So just reevaluating that signage, making it more simple, and putting that out in all of the facilities here on campus would greatly improve the sorting behavior that's occurring here.
And going along with signage, I would just say communication in general to students. Like we said, students, it's hard for people who like aren't into all this stuff like we are to understand the impact of having good recycling. It's hard to like let people know that just one bad item in a recycling bin can contaminate the whole thing, and you know, all that works for nothing. So I just think being able to effectively communicate with people and getting the word out is another important recommendation. All right, looks like that's it. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, James and Zaid. You know, since waste is such a localized issue in terms of how we manage it and how we dispose of it, it's really important to understand what's happening with our peers. So thank you for doing that amazing research. And so this next group, our bird-friendly group, we have project partners that are diverse and that they're not just from Penn. So I'm really pleased to introduce Liz Donnelly from CHOP to introduce her group. And Liz, you can just speak right into the microphone.
Yeah, so I'm Liz Donnelly. I'm currently research tech at CHOP. I've actually been involved in bird window collision research and awareness for several years now. I got involved while I was a student at Temple. And then once I started CHOP, I reached out to some people who I knew through the iNaturalist app, other birding apps, who I knew were doing similar research at Penn, and Joe Durant is who I reached out to, and so we connected, and he told me about the EcoReps project. So I've been a sponsor for 2 semesters now, last fall, this spring. Been working with Annie and Lorena. Gabriel hasn't been, I think he's studying abroad this semester, yeah. And so it's been fantastic. Like when I was at Temple, like there wasn't this, there wasn't quite this kind of infrastructure for like a group project. So I was kind of on my own, but being able to work with the group, like being able to access the resources and the structure. This semester, we were even able to bring in a couple of people from Weiderman who helped us design pamphlets. There's some signs that they were able to, amazing signs they were able to design that were put up around campus. And it's just been fantastic. This is an issue that I'm really passionate about, and I couldn't be happier with the work that EcoReps have done to help with this. So, sorry, I'm not. Are you guys doing the? Yeah, wait. I'm sorry. It was I found out about this. So. Oh yeah, no, not at all. It's just yeah. So thank you so much, guys. Really good.
As Liz introduced, we're Lorena and Annie. Our project partner Gabriel is studying abroad this semester, but he helped us throughout the fall to develop the bird-friendly Penn project from where it started years ago. So first of all, what is a bird strike? Bird strikes occur when usually migratory birds, but when birds collide with architectural structures, usually windows or clear glass hallways that are reflective or have low visibility. This is especially a problem in urban landscapes, a lot of skyscrapers, tall buildings and windows. And of particular concern are migratory species who are less familiar with the spaces that they're flying in than the resident birds. Since 1970, we've lost about 70% of our bird population, and 365 to 988 million birds a year die in bird strikes. So what this project's goal has been is to use the University of Pennsylvania as a living lab to improve bird habitat within our urban setting. We've accomplished this through 3 main initiatives that we took on this year. We've continued monitoring for bird strikes around campus so that we can identify areas of concern and buildings to focus our outreach efforts on. For our outreach, we've designed and implemented a number of events on campus to engage and really educate students about the issue of bird strikes and what they can do to help alleviate this. And then, as I mentioned, we were also able to this semester partner with some students in the School of Design at Weiderman to produce some tangible media to spread around campus to increase awareness, like posters, brochures, and lawn signs. For our bird strike initiative, we used data from past years of this program to identify areas of concern to really focus on this last semester during fall migration. These areas were, there we go. Lauder, Van Pelt, and Annenberg, which Annie took on
Gabriel took New College House West and the Wharton sort of Huntsman area. And then I did the vet school and the biology department near Koski Park. What we found through this was that Lauder College House and Richards Lab remained bird strike hotspots throughout this year's fall migration as well. But some new information is that New College House West actually also has a lot of strikes. This was built in 2019, I believe, 2020. So it's a relatively recent addition to Penn's campus. And of the roughly 40 bird strikes that occurred in the fall semester that we were able to log, 16 occurred at New College House West. So definitely a new area to focus on for future amendments. And here's some data on the individual species. These two largest bars here are the common yellowthroat at the top and the ovenbird. Across this project, more than 470 individual birds have been logged as bird strikes, and they represent 73 different species. Last semester, we had 23 different species of birds. Our two common being common yellowthroat and ovenbird, both of which are migratory species.
Yeah, so we collected all this information and decided that we wanted someone to share it with. So we initially started our outreach by looking at getting in touch with college houses, like officials within college houses, the higher ups, but it was very, very hard. So we decided to kind of switch our platform to more of like a grassroots approach and talk to the students. So we decided to do outreach in college houses and set up tables in Lauder, K-Check, and Stouffer. And we, at these tables, we had brochures. We also had like a whiteboard, which you see up here, to make students take like a pledge to to turn off their lights during migration season. And we also just conversated with students on their knowledge about bird strikes on campus. Like maybe they've seen some, maybe they haven't. Just to in general spread the word, because not a lot of students know that this work is being done. And it's important for them to know in order for us to eventually get the institutional change that we're looking for.
Part of the informational tables that we had at college houses was to hand out brochures that were designed for us by Audrey Denest and Ling Zhang with the School of Design. They roughly cover, Sorry. They roughly cover 3 topics, which are appreciating the living birds on campus, information on what bird strikes are and how they can be prevented, and lastly, some positive design, bird-friendly design that already occurs on Penn's campus, such as the dot decals in Lauder's courtyard, some UV glass at New College House West, some lines at Ring Building, and then the metal art outside of Levin. So here are those full panels. You can see some context on why migratory birds are passing through Philadelphia. Some data, like I said, 470 bird strikes from 73 different species, mostly occurring at night, which is why it's important. And we encourage both building administrators and individual students in their residences to turn lights out at night. And some bird-friendly design guidelines. If for birds colliding with clear glass windows in the day, having decals like the Lauder dots, like the Levin metal art, that follows a 2x4 rule, which is roughly the size of a songbird, 2 inches tall, 4 inches wide, can really help those birds identify that this isn't a space that they can fit through, and they'll avoid those windows. Here we have some birding hotspots on campus just for seeing birds and some common species that you might be able to find. And lastly, some instructions on if you do find a dead bird, how to report that so that we can get that data into our project-based iNaturalist and help inform the future projects.
Yeah, so in addition to the brochures, we also put out lawn signs all over campus. I hope you guys have seen them. That was the point. And we had 2 different designs, which are featured over there. And basically our whole catch for this was just to get people's attention, to show them what exactly it is that we're doing, the work that we're doing, and spread awareness about the Lights Out campaign and how birds are affected by this. So we, posted these all over campus, and we also put a QR code in the bottom, which I will get to. This is just like pictures. The lawn sign.
On College Green, they're out there.
Yeah, so this is the QR code which we put on, which we've been using this for a while. So we just decided to also put it on the lawn sign, and it takes people to a link tree with more information. So the first one is like a form to fill out if people find a bird strike. Not everyone is on iNaturalist, so we just wanted to make it easier for people. We also do have the iNaturalist page in case people do have the app and they would like to report it. We have more about the bird strike project from the Penn sustainability page, and then we also have like the Lights Out program, so people can understand what exactly it is that we're advocating. Yeah, so we also, like I mentioned before, the tabling that we did, this is kind of like the results of it. We first tabled at Lauder. We had some issues with cookies and incentivizing people, so we did not get the turnout that we expected. But as we continued and got more comfortable with the process of talking to random strangers, we were able to reach more and more people later on. I can show, these are some of the results. Like I mentioned a couple slides back, we had students make pledges for the Lights Out campaign, just pledge to turn their lights off. We also conversated, like I know some students said they didn't really see bird strikes on campus, but back home, wherever they're from, they see bird strikes around, so they're familiar with the impact. And then we're gonna talk about challenges and future goals. Like I mentioned before, we had issues in the beginning contacting building administrators. So that's definitely one of our biggest challenges, because even though grassroots work is also very important, we really want to see if we can get building administrators on board with what we're doing. So in the future, definitely pushing building administrators to at least sit down with us and get in the loop with what we're advocating for is very important. Also event promotion, it was very hard balancing all the work and research we were doing along with putting on events and promoting them. So maybe finding a better schedule for promotion, also collecting bird strike data, also doing research, and also spring migration and the timing of spring migration. It's currently like happening right now. So we had some challenges with planning Bird Awareness Week because we initially wanted to do it a little bit earlier, but this is pretty much the height of this migration season, which coincidentally falls in line with like a lot of finals and like campus activities. So, you know, maybe finding a way to balance that in the future. Also, we had the idea of doing a bird watching event, but we couldn't really access things like binoculars, which would be really helpful. So we had one of our project partners gave us the idea of using the Green Fund to invest in bird packs, which would basically include things like binoculars and different ways that Penn students on their own can like engage with the natural environment and learn about birds on campus. And I think investing in something like bird pack would be great for continuing the campus interest in birds past our involvement, because you know this EcoReps project happens like every now and then. So in order to sustain campus's involvement in like the bird population at Penn, I think having something like that would be very great. Yeah.
we want to get more involved in the project. As we mentioned, all our data is logged into the iNaturalist app under the Penn Bird Strikes project. We have more information on what bird strikes look like and how decorating windows can help birds avoid them. And lastly, some information on the birding backpacks program that's available at the Free Library of Philadelphia, which hopefully someday will also be at Penn. And thank you to all of our project partners that helped. Chloe, who's here with us online, Joe with Penn Medicine, and of course Liz, who introduced us, and our partners at the School of Design, Audrey Ling and Dr. Miskowski.
Yep.
We've had a few questions in the chat, and I think they may have been answered as part of your presentation, but just to make sure.
Yes, we had one question at least pop up about what if we find an injured bird, which Chloe managed for us. You can call the Schuylkill Wildlife Clinic. I'd just like to add on, if you do find an injured bird who has struck a window but hasn't died as a bird strike, we would still like that information logged into the iNaturalist page. Once either fill out the form, or if you have iNaturalist in the app notes of I found a bird here, it was injured.
Yeah, still have time for questions.
I was wondering, you call it the voice like, and if so, like, why are they still happening? And if not, like, what are so like
Any one of these computers should work. Okay, there we go. That's an interesting question because as I pointed out on the brochure, they did implement some UV glass at New College House West. You can't see it unless you look really, really close and kind of tilt sideways, but there's a UV pattern that birds can see inside of the glass walkway in New College West, where the dining hall is, basically. By that corridor where the UV glass was implemented, there were no bird strikes. It did effectively had effective visibility. However, every other wall of the courtyard and the perimeter of the building on the north and east sides, as well, every other surface of that building had at least one strike that we logged during this academic year, as well as the walking bridge that's above the dining hall as well, which we weren't able to monitor because unless you live in New College House West, you can't access any of the internal doors, which was another problem with monitoring if you actually need to get to a surface on a building and you don't have pen card access. So it's an interesting case in that it had some design implementation, but not every window is treated with this UV pattern, or UV has a UV treatment or a pattern. And so we did end up seeing a lot of strikes in New College West. And as I mentioned, it is a relatively new building as well. Migratory species don't have the same chance to really learn Philly's landscape the way that resident birds do. So having a new building in a space that was a bit more parkish, was treed if you were on campus before New College House West, definitely changed something in their environment that they weren't prepared for.
Is it possible to add the patterns on now? Or
It is possible to add the patterns on.
That's
I think, yeah, that's what they did with water,
mhm.
and it was effective. Like we kind of surveyed that area, and I didn't really find any birds, especially in the courtyard area where the decals are put. So yeah, it's definitely possible, but I believe that it's on the expensive side to do that, because people haven't really like validated it as an option. So I believe it's on the expensive side to pursue that. Yeah, but the goal would be to have it built in. I think that would be the easiest way, but that is also expensive as well. So like the UV at New College House West was, I think it was like really expensive. I I don't know what Chloe specifically told us, but I think it was really expensive, or else they would have put it in more areas of the building.
It was definitely in the design phase, but it is cost prohibitive. Post building treatments do work, as we've seen at Lauder. After the window decals went up in the inner courtyard, bird strikes went way down. But yeah, both of them present their own cost prohibitive issues.
I will say, because of us, I completed for the friendly design guidelines for these. So that's like how our process is, like, the architect sees all things that the stage required Penn, and that wasn't part of the visual contract. That's why it was, if you were testing it out and kind of see if it worked, it does, but they didn't do it on everything. And so that's why, well, we now know that they work, but they don't work in the system. Yes, if you do it every service, so I think we learned a lot process, and yeah, I think, but it's a good point that we still need to consider what we do in podcast. So, yes, and good point, Chloe.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's so important to get that, institutions don't involve in to have that, like, data, that solid data. Like, I mean, the data can be all every service except the one that's doing it. So that's why it's been so.
Final questions? Just a
I'll repeat them so that they can
That would be great,
hear.
thank you.
Sorry. Yes, Kelly?
I didn't really find it that effective. I think because initially we put it on a flyer, and I feel like the flyer didn't really circulate that much. I don't really think we got that much traction from the QR code. We recently put it out on the lawn signs. So hopefully that does more, especially since we're in migration season now and more birds are passing through. So people will probably find more bird strikes around campus. Hopefully that will be useful. But I didn't really.
I think the Google form has yet to sort of prove itself as far as the general student body finding a bird and reporting it on their own. The question was, were the QR codes effective? But I think the lawn signs have been. Today, as I was walking, I didn't mention it because we were getting ready, but I saw 2 more people stop at the College Green lawn sign and scan the code. And that is at least the 4th time I've been walking on Locust and someone has seen our signs and scanned the code. So I think the lawn signs, as far as getting more information out, are working. The Google form, we'll see.
all we have time for questions. So again, thank you, Annie and Lorena. I think this is a really great example of how so many different folks at Penn can get involved in a student EcoReps project. From Liz, thank you for being here, from CHOP, to design students integrating their work into the project, and really getting some good citizen science happening as part of student EcoRep project. So that's wonderful. So now I'm so happy to introduce Nina Morris, our Sustainability Director for Penn Sustainability, to introduce her team.
Okay, well, it's my honor to introduce the Green Living EcoReps. Julian Marquez is a sophomore in the College of Arts and Sciences studying philosophy, politics, and economics. And Amanda is a sophomore from Philadelphia studying political science and environmental studies. It's been a great pleasure working with both of them to support the Green Living certification program. Before the EcoRep project started, we had a vacancy in this outreach coordinator role. And so our team was dealing with the impacts of COVID and then not having somebody to support a lot of our communication efforts. And so I was super grateful that Julian and Amanda were able to come in and really help us with this, because we were definitely at a loss without them. And I was pretty much considering this project defunct until they came along. So I was really grateful that they were able to bring their enthusiasm for encouraging the student population to adopt more sustainable behaviors, and really brought so much knowledge to how we can use data to make different decisions. And it's been a really wonderful experience working with both of them. And I think you're going to learn a lot today. So I'll turn it over to Amanda and Julian.
Hi, everyone. As Nina said, my name is Amanda and this is Julian, and thank you for such a nice introduction.
Yeah, so our main abstract, our goals for this project was to increase survey participation in our Green Living Survey, which basically surveys students on and off campus and their sustainability habits. And then using this data to like analyze the effectiveness of the Penn Sustainability's office and their initiatives, and just gather data about on campus dorm practices as well.
So we had 4 main project goals. The first one was to increase the number of participants in the program. Our overall goal for the entire semester was to reach 300 participants in the program. I think we initially started out aiming for 200, but we met that.
150.
It was 150 from the previous semester, but we met that within the first semester. So then we upped it to 300. We wound up meeting that as well. The second project goal was to test creative ways to raise awareness about the program, which we'll talk about more on the next slide. The third way was to obtain feedback on the content of the certification itself. And finally, to implement feedback accordingly.
Yeah. So this relates to the Penn CSAP plan 3.0 because it's expanding and strengthening this existing survey and its strategy in analyzing data and acting accordingly. And we also wanted to list Nina as our partner.
Yeah. So in order to fill out the Green Living certification, there were 5 prerequisites to the program. The first one was that you had to practice good recycling habits, to turn off unused lights, use CFLs in your dorm rooms, to turn off faucets or report leaks, and to encourage others to become certified. And you could not move on with the survey unless you met these 5 requirements.
And then so the optional actions within the Green Living program, basically these are the practices that we asked students about and how they, like, for example, recycled on campus or off campus, or were involved in sustainability initiatives at Penn.
And based on these optional actions, students would receive a certain amount of points to determine their level of certification. So if they gained 25 to 39 points, they were a bronze certified Green Living participant. 40 to 54 points, it was a silver certified Green Living participant. And then if you had more than 55 points, you were a gold Green Living certificate.
Yeah, our main methodology of like getting our survey out and making students to fill out the survey was tabling events in person, which is definitely a reason why we had so many more participants than like previous years due to like COVID. So with looser restrictions, we had tabling events at Lauder, Gregory, New College House West, and the High Rise Field. And then the main incentive for people to fill out the survey was we gave out insomnia cookies once they showed that they had completed the survey. And then we also contacted clubs and listservs and asked them to post our survey in their like weekly briefs.
And some of those clubs that we collaborated with included Penn Environmental Group, EcoReps. We presented the survey at one of our meetings, and the Student Sustainability Association at Penn. So these are our findings. We decided to look at the frequency of participants per day throughout the entire school year to see the effectiveness of our tabling events. As you can see, there were very large spikes early in September and at the end of the month or end of February, and then smaller spikes on days we had the tabling events. So the first spike, it was before me and Julian started working with EcoReps and with the Green Living Project. We believe it was some sort of Penn sustainability event. And the last one was a Harnwell College House event that a bunch of RAs ran, and they administered the survey and gave out free plants to any student that filled out the survey. The smaller spikes are our tabling events and any club collaboration events that we had.
And then so our findings mainly showed like, these are like our statistics of on and off campus, like distributions from previous years to now. And as you can see, like we got a lot of more people on campus than off, mainly probably because we're hosting these events within the college dorms and not outside. So we weren't able to like capture the student population that is just like walking on locus that does not live on campus.
So compared to the last in-person Green Living program in 2018 and 2019, we actually had a decrease in gold participants, but we can attribute this to trying to reach out to a broader group of students and not just people interested in sustainability through our tabling events. So we met mostly freshmen and sophomores when we were doing our tabling events, because those are the people that live in the college houses, and these people may not have necessarily been interested in sustainability, but we hope to reach these people with our survey, because the survey includes a lot of information about how people can improve their green living habits, which is the overall mission of the program. And another issue that we might have found was that people may have fewer sustainable habits because of the pandemic. In the fall semester, there was a lot of disposable utensils and packaging associated with the dining plans. And additionally, people had disposable masks and other methods of keeping COVID levels down.
And so, yeah, our conclusions mainly were that we got 376 students to interact with the survey and then 288 to fully complete it. And then our methods of the insomnia cookie incentive definitely increased the percentage of students filling it out. And out of new individuals certified, the proportion of gold participants decreased. But that doesn't necessarily mean, like Amanda said, that less people were having sustainable practices, but that we captured a more accurate depiction of the student population with more participants. And then obviously loosened restrictions helped us have a greater amount of survey participants.
So our recommendations for next year's project is to, again, increase the participation count in the survey to better represent the effectiveness of Penn's initiatives on campus and have like a broader reach of students, not just those interested in sustainability itself. To evaluate data from this project and utilize it to brainstorm new initiatives to tackle key interest issues observed by the Penn Sustainability Office, something that we were working on toward the end of the semester, but weren't able to finish before this presentation, were composting events that we were holding in college houses, which we are still planning on doing at the end of the month. And we will relay that data to whoever works on green living next year. Finally, we aim to shorten the survey and lower requirements and prerequisites. So when we looked at the data itself, there were a lot of students that interacted with the survey, but did not finish it early on. And we might attribute that to not knowing if they met all 5 criteria. Something that Skylar and Brian mentioned before was that a lot of students don't know if they have CFLs in their dorm. And that was one of like the 5 requirements. So we think a lot of students stop because of that. Yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for listening. If you have any questions, just let us know. So the final number, when I looked at the data, it told us that there were 376 students that filled out the survey, but only 288 finished it. So we aim to continue in-person methods. We believe that either if people filled it out online on their own, there's not really a way that you can force someone to finish their survey. For the most part, when we were tabling, people would finish the survey, otherwise they wouldn't get an insomnia cookie. But some people would come over, start filling it out, and realize that they didn't have enough time to finish it, which is another reason why we would like to shorten the survey. So they would start the survey and wind up not finishing it and leave it.
So about half of understanding that a lot of in that this sort of or updated assessment of.
We believe that it is probably a fair assessment of individuals taking the test. We also would attribute that to, even though we felt like we got a broad encompassment of the students, the general student body, we still had a lot of involvement with sustainability groups on campus. For instance, I had students in Penn Environmental Group and the Students Sustainability Association at Penn fill out the surveys during our meetings. So that was probably at least like 30 students that participated in it. And then EcoReps as well. So that's about like 30 to 40 kids total that are in sustainability groups and want to obviously have more sustainable practices than the general body.
But yeah, we still recommend to like update it, either like shorten it and get rid of like redundant questions or things that are outdated.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Amanda and Julian. It's really impressive to see how you exceeded your goal, but it's also really important for us to have such great student-focused feedback on this survey. It's definitely a lot of your recommendations will help us to improve the survey over time and give our new sustainability coordinator some great things to think about. So thank you. So our next team's project partner couldn't be here today. Vinny McManus is our regional food forester from Bon Appetit, who has been supporting his group throughout this process. So today I'm really happy to introduce Majd Ayad, Sarah Klepsky, and Sito Sanford. Sito will not actually be able to join us today because he's traveling for another event, but I'm excited to introduce Majd and Sarah to speak about their project.
Okay, hi, I'm Sarah. I'm one of the members of our dining sustainability training team.
Hello, I'm Majd. I'm also working in Penn Dining project.
So here's the introduction of our team. Sato, he's not here today, but he is a freshman from Charleston, South Carolina, studying chemical engineering. I'm a sophomore from Philly, studying nursing and nutrition.
And I'm also a freshman in Weiderman program.
So these are just our project goals. Our goals were to improve the knowledge of waste management through our presentation and survey that we came up with for the dining staff. We wanted to improve sustainable knowledge in all of the dining halls by successfully implementing our program, increase composting and recycling in the dining halls through clear identification and training of the barriers to it, and also by identifying the barriers to waste management by speaking with the dining staff, as well as our project partner, Mr. McManus.
So as we see before, our main goals focused on both individuals, like the staff individuals, and also the system that is implemented in dining halls. So an overview of what we did, we discussed with our project partner about Penn sustainability actions in dining halls, and also after that we did a survey. We distributed to the staff in K-Check dining hall, and after that, based on what we got from the survey, we prepared a presentation to give to them as a training. After that, we were supposed to give it a presentation, but unfortunately, under some circumstances, we couldn't finish it. But we finished like the training, but we couldn't give it to the dining staff. So we included that in our future plans.
So here's an example of some of our pre-survey questions. We wanted to ask them just to gauge an idea of how much the staff knows about sustainability, how much they care about sustainability. What do they feel about proper waste management? Do they do that on the job? And also whether or not that they feel that their actions can actually make a difference. And we also asked for their own opinion if they feel that color-coded bins are more helpful, or like labeled bins are more helpful for proper waste management. And from this, we did gather that a majority of them do prefer the color-coded bins for sorting their waste. Also, we found out that a majority of the staff does care about proper waste management. They do care about sustainability. It's just a big issue in the dining halls is that the students can kind of just dump their waste into a trash can that just everything goes into. It's one trash can. There's nothing that's separated. It's all thrown in there. So everything ends up contaminated. And then their plate is just stuck on the rack. So the staff is mainly just responsible for cleaning off any food that still might be stuck onto the plate rather than properly sorting the waste.
So the presentation included many topics. We focused on giving them a brief idea of what sustainability is, because we want to focus on them as individuals to get them to care about sustainability in general, and then what the Penn Dining is doing to help them to increase the actions there. And after that, we included the problems that we're facing in the Penn dining halls, and how can the staff, what can they do in order to decrease the amount of food waste and do composting and recycling.
Okay, so one of our first topics that we introduced in our presentation to the staff was what is sustainability? And we defined it as the act of maintaining the world that we live in. And we emphasized thinking of our future generations when we meet our own needs. Having sustainable practice is not only something for you now, but it's for your children, your grandchildren, and everyone after you. It affects everyone. So that is why we wanted to emphasize how important it is to them.
And then we talked about how the Penn, what has been Penn doing for that. So this includes the Penn sustainability and EcoReps. Part of our project is what is helping them, and also the climate sustainability actions that here on campus.
Yes, so we mentioned to them how we do have a goal of achieving 100% carbon neutrality by 2042. So sustainable practice is very important on campus. So them just adding in a little bit, just small little actions in their work can help go a long way to reach these goals. So then we wanted to show them what problems we're facing as a result of climate change and non-sustainable practice in the world.
So we focused on educating them what is happening right now. So we listed some topics about what is the world is facing in terms of natural disasters, like climate change. We focused on rising the cost of items and increasing the sea levels, and natural resources loss, as well as climate justice. This is all was to make them feel how important their actions will affect, how important what they're doing in terms of affecting the world as a whole. Because as Sarah mentioned before, there has been a shortage in staff in the dining halls. So it becomes their responsibility as individuals to help the dining halls.
So here are some example slides from our presentation. We included just images of the effects that climate change can have on the world, such as the ice caps melting, forest fires, smoke within cities. We also wanted to make an emphasis on climate justice. So we featured a few images of how climate change is affecting neighborhoods in our city. So extreme heating in Hunting Park, the flooding in Eastwick, and the refinery explosion. A lot of the more lower income communities suffer and take the brunt of the effects of climate change and your sustainable practices, mainly because the city tries to focus on making the richer neighborhoods look nicer, and then they put less of an effort into other neighborhoods. So these areas are not affected equally. A lot of the dining hall staff, they're residents of Philadelphia, the residents of West Philadelphia, and some of them do experience the brunt of the effects of climate change. And if this keeps going on and there are not actions taken against this, it can get worse and worse. So think about themselves, their children, their friends, anyone who lives in the city of Philadelphia. These are things that can affect them in the long run.
And then we turned on from focusing on what is happening and then what should they do. We focus on waste management because apparently before COVID, all the staff is trained to manage the waste and separate the recycling, the composting, and landfill. But after COVID, what happened that due to short of staff there, as well as like they forgot how to do it. So there has been decrease in the waste management that is implemented in the dining halls. And we talked about composting and we refreshed their knowledge about waste management. So that was our goal in doing the training.
And then just like to add and emphasize again is that a lot of the improper waste management has been because students have just been allowed to throw everything into one bin. So food that could be composted, things that could be recycled have not been, just because students, they're just rushing out for everything in there and there's nothing that the dining staff can really do to help that. So part of what we wanted to do is to implement that only the dining staff are separating waste and not the students. So everything's just handed off to them, because they are the ones who know and they're the ones who will kind of care more than a lot of the students. So here are the example slides of why we should compost.
So we talked, like this is a slide from the presentation that we're supposed to give it to the dining staff. So why should we compost to decrease the greenhouse emissions? So we focus on the long-term effect of their actions.
And then here we're continuing on to the bin and bag coordination. So showing them everything will be color coded to make it pretty easy just to separate waste. So green for composting, blue for recycling, and the gray for the landfill. And again, here's the dish drop issue where students are not separating everything, as you can tell in the pictures over there. There's the blue bin, which would be recycling, has food in there, which you would not recycle. So this has been a big issue and a reason why most of the waste has not been properly managed.
And then in kind of getting them engaged in that training, we had this activity. Well, they had when we mixed like some stuff, the blue Legos with the gray ones and green. And part of the training was to separate them and then talk more about how separating the waste can help them. Like for example, the green represented the organic and the blue represented the recyclable waste, while the gray ones were the landfill waste.
And we also wanted to show the importance of like not contaminating anything. With the compost, especially if accidentally one of the employees throws like a glove in there or a piece of paper, the entire what was composted is now contaminated and cannot be used for compost and must go to the landfill. So we just wanted to show the importance of just separating everything and making sure that nothing gets mixed in so that everything can be utilized properly after it's separated.
Then we moved on, other than the training, we talked about how sustainability can be implemented in their daily life. So kind of like ways how to be more sustainable in their daily lives, like reusing bottles and turning off the lights, as well as using public transportation, which all of these actions can help them to be more sustainable. And then we kind of talked about, now we're talking about our conclusions.
So we had 16 of the pre-survey responses filled out. We did have a bit of an issue. We weren't allowed, there are certain policies set in place by Penn Dining where we can't send out the surveys because not everybody has a Penn email and you can only send it to Penn emails. So they had to be conducted in person. We weren't able to get all of the staff to fill it out, but still a decent amount for our data. As I had mentioned before, the passion for sustainability was high, but most of the staff, they do really care about having sustainable practices, and the problem stemmed from just a lack of time, shortage of staff, and again, just students throwing all of their waste in a bin, not the lack of interest. And yes, the difficulties were spreading the media and information digitally. And we also just had some issues with communication with our project partner, issues of timing. That was why we couldn't give the presentation and the post survey. Our hopes for this project were to have the dining staff fully trained on proper waste management, and they are taking care of just all of the trash being thrown in the waste and getting rid of the trash bins for students to place their trash in. And then eventually we can implement similar programs into the other dining halls, depending on how they are structured, since they're all structured differently in terms of waste management. And I had mentioned that here as well. So thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, we will answer them.
So we wanted to first do the whole training for one dining hall and then do the post survey. And after that, if we like see that our training worked, which is hopefully well, we will like contact each dining hall individually, because as Sarah said, each of them has like individual systems. So yeah, eventually we're hoping to extend our training to other dining halls.
But yeah, I think that the same survey could be used, since it's not anything about like how that dining hall is specifically managing waste, just the staff's like, you know, concern about having sustainable practice and what they know already. I think the same survey could be used. It would just be communicating with who's in charge of each dining hall, seeing what their current practices are and what their protocols are, and then basing each individual hall, their training and the presentation we give off of what we learned from who's in charge of it. Any other questions?
Was there anything that back from the dining staff at the time?
Maybe that we would have like one or two responses of people who said that they didn't care about sustainability, but the majority of them, they were very interested, and they do have a lot of concern. And I kind of expected that, I guess, like being from Philadelphia and knowing people, a lot of people do care about like the state of communities and the state of their neighborhoods and just the overall livelihood here. So I don't think it surprised me at all. Just the few people who said that they didn't care. That was maybe a little surprising. No, we were in communication with Mr. McManus, who's in charge of the K-Check dining hall. And through him, we were allowed to survey the dining staff, but he was like our only like way in. That's why we were not able to give the presentation and then do the post survey afterwards. But no, he was the only person we had communication with regarding this.
They're going to focus on sustainability. So I think we've got some good allies to help us influence going at the peak. They're a contractor for the university. So it's for the university to help encourage that behavior, we can go along. So I think it's, as well, you guys can get a chance to this dining hall. Hopefully we can get it further down the road.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Majd and Sarah, for your presentation. I think this sets us up really well to be able to kind of share this beyond this project in the future. And sometimes we have recurring EcoReps projects, so maybe there's an opportunity for a future project as well. I'm going to be brief because it looks like our computer is running low, but I just want to thank you all so much for coming today to learn about the student EcoReps projects. I want to thank the student EcoReps for your dedication in making a positive impact on campus. I also want to thank the project partners and the student EcoReps coordinators for your guidance and mentorship to the students throughout this process, as well as the Division of Facilities and Real Estate Services for supporting this program. We truly would not be able to do this without each and every one of you, and it has a great impact on our campus sustainability. So I encourage all of you to consider what you've learned from the students today and how you might think about applied learning in your work and how we can utilize students and work from staff to advance sustainability on campus. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us at the Sustainability Office with the contact information here if you are interested in a student EcoReps project in the future. And after that, I'll just say thank you all for taking time to be here today and have a wonderful weekend.